All right. Hey guys, we're going to talk about civil rights today and how they've changed over time, the different laws that are passed, and know that civil rights are the rights of citizens to political and social freedom and equality. So, where do they first show up? For us, it's in our Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self evident that all men are created equal. When the founding fathers, when Jefferson, when they wrote this, they didn't really mean all men at the time. They're talking about just the uh, people who were influencing governments, your white landowning people. So the 14th Amendment comes along, and the 14th Amendment basically grants citizenship to anyone born on U.S. soil. And this includes all the newly freed slaves, because the 14th Amendment's right after the Civil War. So, uh, before the Civil War, that voting power, like I said, it's held by white landowners. So there's a need to replace this. There's a couple amendments passed during Reconstruction, but the 14th, that's the big one, granting citizenship. If you fast forward through the late 1800s and the 1900s, African Americans, they're not actually getting all these rights. It says they're citizens, but they're not getting the rights they need. This is the time of Jim Crow laws, where Africans they're being discriminated against. You hear Plessy versus Ferguson, we've talked about, saying that separate but equal is okay. It's eventually overturned by Brown versus Board of Education. Well, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, it's going to be a law passed by Congress. So it says this ends segregation in public places and banned employment discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. It's considered one of the crowning legislative achievements of the civil rights movement. Say why it's needed. Well, many states, especially in the South, they're still using those poll taxes, where they're charging people a tax so they can vote, making them take these literacy tests, but not everyone, just African Americans, and making them ridiculously hard, giving them time limits, uh, and making it so they can't vote. I said it before, but these are going to be known as Jim Crow laws. There's also going to be the white supremacist group, like the Ku Klux Klan, running around uh, acting violently against African Americans. So the Civil Rights Act of 1964, that's why it was needed to combat all of that. The next year, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, that's another one, aimed to overcome legal barriers at the state and local levels that prevented African Americans from exercising their right to vote as guaranteed under the 15th Amendment of the Constitution. The Voting Rights Act is considered one of the most far reaching pieces of the civil rights legislation in the U.S. And it's needed again to combat those poll taxes and literacy tests to make sure that these African Americans and anyone is being able to vote freely. Um, why is this act cited or involved in many court cases? Well, although the Voting Rights Act has evolved, it is still a pivotal source for protecting our right to vote. So court cases will go back to this as a reference point.